Life imitates art far more than art imitates life. I grew up playing make-believe online. As long as it had virtual items, virtual currencies, I was probably playing it. Whatever was popular back then, I probably tried it out. I may not play as much of those games anymore, but I still feel like I am playing until now. And why is that? Because right now, life is looking like a game, thanks to the advent of cryptocurrencies and NFTs. The future of the internet right now is looking like a game. Despite all the hype though, not everyone is looking forward to this future. I mean, just look at the popular headlines right now. We have celebrities spending like equivalent of my life savings on NFTs, scam shitcoin projects, proof of cryptocurrency's environmental destruction. So there are very conflicting narratives here. On one hand, people are saying that this is a life-changing technologies, and on the other, people are worried that these technologies could destroy us. I would like to make a middle ground between both of those points. So yes, Web3's mainstream narrative is exclusive. However, I believe it has the potential to be inclusive for all. But what the heck does Web3 even mean? Before I explain what Web3 is, I first need to explain to you all what Web 1 and what Web 2 means. So Web 1 can be summarized as the read-only era. This is because majority of users were passive consumers, but they only did was consume content. So think of like reading resources like Wikipedia or sites on GeoCities, so on and so forth. Those who did dominate content creation, however, were professionals. That's because they were privileged enough to have the technical literacy to navigate the web during this early time. So think of developers, writers, reporters, journalists, so on and so forth. Now, we are currently in the Web 2 era, which is also known as the read-write era. Thanks to upgrades in servers, developer skills, and faster internet speeds, we now had interactive web applications which enabled users to create content easily. Now, all users were capable of being content creators. So examples of Web 2 applications are our classic social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also other platforms where you can create longer form content. Think of Blogger, Medium, YouTube, so on and so forth. However, a drawback of this ACE is that this gave platforms most of the power, because these centralized platforms have ownership over our user data and all the user-generated content. This is why when it comes to technology, there is no such thing as free, because when you use a platform for free, you are very likely giving something away, such as your data and content. So how can users take back power from these platforms? Enter the Web3 era, where users can not only read and write, but also own. All users would have the power to own their content, data, and assets. This is empowered by decentralized technology, such as the blockchain. Web3 has many use cases, and cryptocurrencies and NFTs are some of its most popular applications. If you ever wanted to own something you've acquired online, just like how you would own a virtual item in a game. Web3 can enable that for you, whether it's domains, data storage, the content you write, so on and so forth. Web3 imagines an internet that is governed by the collective rather than big tech corporations. Why do people want Web3? Well, in this hyper-digital era, the web is so intertwined with our lives to the point that it affects almost everything, like politics, education, and culture. Thus, the benefits provided by Web3 are appealing to many people, such as it being censorship resistant, being immutable, being permissionless, basically being free from the throes of big power. So what does that look like when applied? Well, for instance, for being censorship resistant and immutable, this technology called Arweave is being used to permanently store documents about the Ukraine war. In Arweave, no one can tamper with these documents no matter how much authority they have. That's because of the way it was designed. So imagine applying this for other use cases too. And another example for enabling permissionlessness, Web3 also helps creators be free from labels, such as in the case of Latasha. She was able to make a better living as an artist when she got free of her label and was able to start advocating for herself as an artist independently. She was able to sell her own works, market for it, so on and so forth, just because of Web3 platforms that enabled this independence. So wow, Web3 already has a lot to offer us. Yet, why can't the general public accept this? It's because of the way the narrative around Web3 is framed. This can be seen in the perspectives that are focalized in this space, along with the language that is generally used. English time! Humans are story-driven. Our sense of reality is shaped by the narratives that we share, hear, make, and consume. Because of the power that they hold on us, it's important that we integrate their structures, who consumes them, what gets told, and sometimes even what does not get told. So what determines the narrative one perceives of Web3? Well, it depends on their context, the surrounding circumstance and environment that determine or clarify meaning. This can be made up of the following. First, there's a point of view. This is the attitude and bias that helps align people to a side. Then there's focalization, whose particular perspectives are spotlighted to the audience so that the audience can see what these spotlighted people see, feel what they feel, think what they think. And finally, there's framing. This shapes and informs how we, the audience, will react to the events, characters, so on and so forth. And one form of framing is language. So language is generally the meaning-making tools that we use to communicate. So language isn't just composed of words, it's also images, gestures, and other semantic systems. Language is a system where meanings are created, negotiated, valued, and even devalued. So even if language can reflect our reality, it's also responsible for creating, shaping, and influencing it. So what is the language used in the mainstream narrative surrounding Web3? First, let's take a look at the words typically used. So it is full of jargon, complex technical words like blockchain, dApps, gas, layers, stablecoins, wallets. There is also the way people communicate with each other. The lingo is full of abbreviations, similar to how gamers communicate. GM stands for good morning. WAGMI stands for we are going to make it. FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. If an outsider heard the conversation between what people would like to call crypto bros, they would sound like aliens, and I don't blame them. Next, let's take a look at the images that are used in this narrative. NFTs have a very infamous aesthetic. Not only do they look bored, they also look boring. That's because many NFTs tend to look the same. Flat coloring, black solid lines, animals. If this is the future of art, as many would like to claim, why does it all look the same?
Perhaps this is because of the main creators behind this. Dan Brooks has an opinion piece in Gawker called "The Future is Not Only Useless, It's Expensive," where he talks about this. He writes, "And this is why the future looks so ugly and boring. It reflects the stunted inner lives of the finance and technology professionals who produced it. As the visual manifestation of cryptocurrency, NFT art combines the nuanced social awareness of computer programmers with the soulful whimsy of hedge fund managers. It is art for people whose imaginations have been absolutely captured by a new kind of money you can do on the computer." The finance and tech industries are infamous for their lack of diversity. It's often white and Asian males who make up majority of the working professionals there. So this is also the same audience that is in the NFT space. Well, no wonder everything looks the same because there's a lack of diverse perspectives.
Another popular aesthetic in the NFT world, and also I guess Web3 in general, would be cyberpunk. This can be seen in popular NFT collections like CryptoPunks, Azuki, and Chain Runners. Cyberpunk is, I would say, the most popular depiction of our technological future in pop culture today, and this can be seen in the prevalence of media like Blade Runner, Akira, The Matrix. People love this aesthetic. People want to live in this kind of world because they think it's cool and rebellious, right? However, in a cyberpunk future, the future looks grim because it is a world that is a capitalist dystopia. So even in the outside, people are mesmerized by the ideas of cyberpunk. Cyberpunk societies are highly dysfunctional. And I think it is quite terrifying that the cyberpunk aesthetic is sought after, because if life imitates art, then I worry that our reality will start looking a lot like a cyberpunk world, a capitalist dystopia. And this is already happening, actually. This can be seen in the focalized perspectives in this space today. For instance, let's look at all the celebrities, content creators, influencers advocating, evangelizing crypto. Alice Capel has this great video titled "When Capitalism Met Identity Politics." Here, she talks about the red washing of crypto. Red washing is a practice where an organization presents itself as progressive and concerned about social equality and justice just to get better PR or economic gain. So this can be seen in how a lot of these female celebs, content creators, and influencers are trying to get more women into this male-dominated world of NFTs and cryptocurrencies, using buzzwords like empowerment, representation, so on and so forth. But one can't help wondering, is their goal building community or acquiring customers?
As Natasha argued in her article, more and more people, privileged people from Privileged communities or marginalized communities use community for commerce, and the tactics they use are very similar to that of proper scammers who do not disclose the risk of this or that transaction and the potential for huge money loss.
But Bianca, Web3 does deserve their hype because it's making the future of work. Just look at all those feel-good stories about NFT artists making it big, or Filipinos being able to make a living through playing play-to-earn games. However, upon further research, I couldn't help but see that there are still some things being swept under the rug. For instance, there are enormous barriers to entry. You need a lot of capital to get started, whether it's minting your artworks or buying an Axie team. Trust me, you won't be able to afford the necessary capital to get started if you were a normal person. Another thing that is also being ignored is that you need to grind just to be able to make it big. One example for artists, Wendy Yan talks about her experience on being an artist and crypto. And one thing artists in this world have to do is that they become their own salespeople. They end up spending more time marketing their works versus creating them just so that they can make a living. And doing all these marketing activities is detrimental to an artist's creativity. Even if artists do end up earning way more versus how they usually earned, it's still the investors that earn the most money out of all of this. People won't generally buy your art if the floor price is more than an absurd amount. However, once they win the auction, they could make 10 times or more from it being sold in the secondary market. And in the secondary market, artists don't get much from these sales at all. Another example can be seen in play-to-earn games like Axie. In his article, Play-to-Earn and Bullshit Jobs, he discusses how playing Axie can be seen as more like work, more like a chore than as play, even if it is as designed as a game. This is characteristic of a bullshit job, which is defined by David Graeber as a meaningless job that you can't justify the existence of. In fact, when people were asked would they still play Axie Infinity this without its earning potential, I don't think many people would still be playing the game at all. Axie also comes with other problems. For instance, one's earnings depends on the value of the SLP coin, which is very volatile. One moment it can be soaring, and the next moment it can have a negative value. You never really know. And also, you are still at the whims of the developer, which in this case is Sky Mavis. You might get involved with a ban wave, which renders your Axie banned from battles. Overall, as seen in both art and play-to-earn games, people are still at the whims of platforms and the market. Very similar to the Web 2 world we're living in now.
No matter how innovative the technology is, you can't really call it innovative if it still maintains the same capitalistic status quo, right? We live in a society, and it's a late-stage capitalist one at that. The takeaway here is the language used by the mainstream narrative surrounding Web3 is depicting a future where all of human experience is hyper-financialized. And doesn't that sound so capitalistic, so dystopian to you all already? This goes to show that since language has the power to shape our reality, it also can contribute to unequal social relations, such as the ones enabled by capitalism. So what is the message that this narrative gives the audience? Well, it shows that Web3 is for personal gain, and those who are set to gain are those who are players. I don't just mean gamers, I just generally mean those who are privileged enough to be rich and technically literate, because they are the only ones who can afford to play. If Web3 is a game, it is a rich man's game. And it is a zero-sum or finite game at that. Because if there are designated winners, there are also designated losers. This is why people hate Web3. It's because of this narrative. Because of this narrative, they believe that these technologies can do no one good and that they should just be dropped for the sake of everyone's benefit. However, I am an optimist, especially when it comes to technology, and I believe that technology can also be used for good, even if it has the potential for evil. And I'm not alone in this. I believe that there are a lot of perspectives in this Web3 space that we're missing out on, that is trying to make Web3 a better place for everyone. And I believe that if more people heard this narrative, they'd be able to change their mind about this technology. Let me introduce you to the Green Pill movement. This movement aims to create human thriving by creating a more regenerative infrastructure for the world. How do they aim to do this? By building crypto-economic systems that create positive externalities. So what that means is they want to create systems that have net positive financial outcomes or outcomes for humanity. Basically, everyone gets to win. How is this narrative different from the mainstream narratives that tackle Web3? Let's take a look at the language used. First, I'd like to point out how people in this movement call themselves. They call themselves regens versus the typical mainstream degen, which is short for degenerate. I'd like to compare the approaches of these two when it comes to the financial system. Degens want to leverage this financial system, specifically the cryptocurrencies, their goal being near-term personal gain. Meanwhile, if you're a regen, you would also leverage this financial system, but you prefer to do it for everyone's gain. So you prioritize the collective over the individual. You can also see this difference in mindsets through what regens build. When I was learning about this movement, I found it really difficult because it was hard to pin down what exactly they were building. Like, how exactly would you describe crypto economic systems that create positive externalities? It's a bit harder to pin down versus the typical NFT or cryptocurrency, which has a clear concept in our heads already. And I think this goes to show how regens have an expanded imagination. For an example, I'd like to bring attention to what Vitalik Buterin is doing. He is the co-founder of the Ethereum blockchain, and he is always thinking about the larger social political issues that he thinks this blockchain can solve. So what does this look like? It looks like fairer voting systems, better urban planning, universal basic income, public goods projects, so on and so forth. He even said he wants this blockchain, this platform of his, to be a counterweight to authoritarian governments and to upend Silicon Valley's stranglehold over our digital lives. I think this is interesting to compare versus the mainstream narrative, where capitalism still runs about. Vitalik doesn't want to maintain this status quo, he wants to change it for a more regenerative one. And because regens have expanded imaginations, they're able to imagine a more ambitious future for us humans, one that is utopian, one that is solar punk. Solar punk started as a niche environmental movement, one that was focused on renewable energy and sustainable technology. However, it has evolved. It is now part of a global conversation about how to build an optimistic future together. It's regenerative and focuses on humans thriving alongside each other instead of fighting each other, and thriving with the world around us rather than in opposition to it. I think that's a future all of us would like. I think that's a future all of us would agree on. And that is the message of this narrative for the audience. Web3 can be used for the common good. Web3 can be designed as a positive sum or infinite game where everyone can win, where everyone can truly make it. So now we've been exposed to two opposing narratives. What can we learn from this? I think we can learn that any kind of technology, not just Web3, should be approached with nuanced and not binary thinking. I believe that we should learn to think in terms of complementary opposites. We shouldn't just think that, oh, this is bad or this is good. I believe that both sides should be able to exist. I believe that we should learn to see both these sides along with the possibilities in between them. To put simply, I believe that we should be okay with uncertainty. And this is humbling, but it is this humility combined with a wider perspective that helps us make better decisions, especially when it comes to technology. This is why narratives matter. According to Joe and Gideon, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. This is true. The narratives we tell ourselves, they deeply inform our reasons for being and in turn for how we act into the world. Sometimes though, the stories we tell ourselves aren't actually our own. They can come from big corporations, big institutions, big algorithms, and it's easy to get trapped into narratives that don't improve us instead of empowering us, narratives that we collectively create ourselves. First, we have to be intentional about choosing the narratives that we want to see into the world, so that we can free ourselves from centuries-old collective machinations like capitalism. When we choose right, the narrative that we tell ourselves can give us profound hope and agency in building the future we want to see. So I'd like to ask, do you want the future where you're endangered to technology, a cyberpunk one, or one where you thrive alongside it, a solar punk one? That narrative is up to you. Thank you for watching today's little STEM analysis. Thank you for watching my little analysis. If you liked that, don't be afraid to like or maybe leave a comment below. I would really appreciate it. Have a good day.